In this video, we'll be setting up a Centrify evaluation of the Server Suite software. Our basic requirements are we need Active Directory, we need a place in AD to store the Centrify data, so we need a Centrify OU within ID that we have full admin rights to. Either can be set up ahead of time or we can create that and go along. We're going to need to create some sub-containers underneath that as well. We need a Windows machine to be used to the Centrify console. There is no Centrify server, but the GUI is an MMC, and we can install that on Windows 2008, 2012, Windows 7. If we're going to be doing the auditing, which comes with the Enterprise Edition, I suggest use that Windows 2008 or 2012 with 4 gigs RAM for the SQL server. The SQL server takes up a lot of resources. Pre-install with Microsoft ADUCT and group policy tools. That way we know we have the .NET requirements that we need, and also we'll be using the ADUCT tools to make the Centrify the changes inside of Centrify OU. We need some test machines to actually do to put the agents on. We need to download the Centrify software and also have the Eval temporary keys. The software installation won't continue if you don't have proper Eval keys. And again, there is no Centrify server. Active Directory is the server. We're just storing all of our data inside of an OU called Centrify. There's no AD schema changes, and no software has to be installed on the domain controllers. The basic steps are, first we're going to configure the Centrify OU in AD. We're going to download the software and copy it to the appropriate locations, which might need sending it inside the VM, and that could take some time. Install the Centrify Standard Edition software tools, and then go through the wizards and the configuration tools. We're going to configure and then set up the Centrify Zones, a basic structure, and I'll show you how that works. And then we're going to set up a basic test user, and then we'll be done for this video. So let me go inside my VMware. First thing I want to do is set up my Centrify OU. So this is my domain in my little test world here is called centrify.vms. So I need to make a new OU called Centrify. Now inside this container, the minimum ones I need are inside this OU. I'm going to make 2 other OUs. One called licenses, and one called zones. Centrify pretty much stores all of its data inside zones. We do store the license key inside the license container, or we need one place to put it, so we're going to put it here. Also, if you're going to be doing the auditing, it's easy enough to go ahead and make one now. Go ahead and make one called Direct Audit. When we install the Centrify software, it's going to ask us where do we want to store our zone information. We're going to point it to here. Where do we want to store our licenses, and we're going to point it to here. And that's it for the setup. So now I need to go where I have the software. I've already copied it down to this machine. It's 2 zip files, the Management Enterprise Edition. Even if you're not setting up auditing, I usually download the entire auditing enterprise package so I can do auditing at a later time. It contains the standard edition plus the auditing, so it doesn't hurt to get more than you need at this point. Here's the all agents package, and then here's what I already extracted the zip file. So let me go into there and click on my auto run. I'm going to install the access. That's all we need to do right now. The auditing is for the enterprise. We can do that at a later time, and that'll be on a different video. This also contains the Windows agent, but we don't need to concern ourselves with that right now. We're going to click on the access. It says I still have another ADUCT running. Because another MMC running, that's because I still have ADUCT up. You want to make sure you close that window. When we're making changes to MMCs, you got to have all consoles closed. This is asking us for to install the SQL, these miniature SQL server components. This is because our tool allows us to import sudoers file and then manipulate the sudoers files, as well as manipulating some other information. We need a temporary database to do that. That's why we need those components. Click yes and then continue. Agree to the term of rights. I need a name. Here's our options for all the utilities and all the tools we have. I usually stick with everything that it comes out the defaults, and then I'll usually add in here the ZPA. We don't need to configure the ZPA now. The zone provisioning agent is a batch job basically. Allows us to make the user profiles. I go ahead and install it now. We don't have to have it running, but at least it's installed at this point. We don't need the password synchronization extension, but we use everything else. I'm fine with installing it there. Click Next. And now we wait for it to install the components. It shouldn't take that long. We can unclick this. We do not need to configure and start the ZPA tool right now. It gives us a little warning. That's okay. And basically now we're done. Now we hit exit and close this out. You'll notice now we have these icons, the Direct Manage Deployment Manager, and then our Access Manager. We're going to click on this first, and we should kick off a wizard. Because we've never ran this before, it's going to ask us this little setup wizard. Click Next. This is the credentials. I'm actually logged in as Diana Worth right now. That's my test user in my environment. Has all the credentials we need, so I'm going to keep that. This is the part here. It says Centrify is asking you, where are we going to store the license container? I don't want to put it under program data. I already made a place for it, so I'm going to browse to it. Centrify licenses. Saying OK, hit Next. Now what this is telling you right now that we try to make things easier. By default, we're going to go back and make that license container. We're going to grant read properties. Now, after you're done, you can go back and actually change that to make it less permissive if you want for your security policies, depending on how they are. So that's okay. Now here it says I need a license key. Get my license key here. Put it in there. Click Next. Now it's saying a zone container. Now where do I want to put it in there? I don't want it under program data, so let me go to Centrify Zones. That's where I want it. This is talking about when you have these non-Windows systems join AD, where are they going to go? Where the Centrify agent is joining these computers, what container they're going to go into. This is talking about the computers container. I'm not going to use the computers container, so I'm okay not clicking on this to grant accounts. So skip this and hit Next, and we are finished, and then we are done. So we had launched this console, it went through a wizard, and now the wizard finished, and now we're back into this console. So I can click on here and say Create New Zone. Remember, it's still at where I put it. So just recognize that this is the place I already told us to install, to use as my Centrify Zones. I'm going to call this Global. So the Centrify hierarchy of zones is basically, it's a tree structure. I always make a high level called Global, and then we can make some child zones underneath. So go ahead and make a global zone. I don't need description right now. Click Next, hit Finish. So now I can go into here and I have a global zone. Now I can right click on here and say Create Child Zone. Now this is assuming I'm going to have one test Unix machine, one test, I'm going to call this Linux, and one test Mac, or in my evaluation here I'm a couple different test machines. I'm going to make a subzone for every one of those. So let's make a Linux subzone, child zone. Now if you look under here, I have a child zone called Linux. I create a new one here called Mac. I'm right clicking on child zone and say Create Child Zone, and now I'm calling one called Windows. Let's just call it Win. Makes it easier to type later on. So I'm setting this up so I have everything configured before I install my agents, and that's actually key here. Have all these components set up before you go and try to install agents on any other side. When you're doing the installs and the joins, you want to make sure this is all set up ahead of time. So now, again, the Centrify zone structure is it's a parent tree, a parent-children tree structure, basic LDAP tree structure here. Children inherit properties of their parents, so I can define things in global and the children will know about them. And in Centrify, the basic things we got to do is you have to have a Unix profile if we're going to deal with Unix machines or Mac machines, and then you have to have some kind of role or permissions to log on to those machines. We don't have to build any kind of profiles for the Windows side, but on the Unix data, I need a standard Unix profile. And this is basically what is my user ID, what is my UID, what is my groups, and things like that. So inside the Unix data, I like to do this in global. I can define everything globally, and they will go down to the children domain and be inherited. So I'm going to go in the global Unix data, right-click in here, add user to zone. Let me do that again. I'm under Unix data, under global, Click on the users. I can right click here, I can right click in the white space, and I'm choosing add user to zone. Again, I'm adding a user to zone. I'm not adding them into AD. I'm actually finding them in AD and adding to this zone. If you want to get technical, it's actually creating a service connection point behind inside of AD that points to this user object. So I'm Diana Worth. She's my test user in this whole evaluation setup. So I want to add Diana Worth here. Click OK. It's saying, hey, she's an enterprise administrator. Are you sure? Yes, we're sure. Now these are all the user profile. There's my login name, a UID. I can change it to be anything I want. Right now I'm going to have it generated from the SID, which I know is unique through all of AD, and this is OK for me. So I'm going to click OK. So now I have a user profile for Diana Worth that can work everywhere. Inside all the computers I ever joined, the Linux zone, Mac zone, Windows doesn't matter because I don't need user profiles. But this profile goes down all the way into the children's zones. So now that I have a profile, I have to give authorization. So I like to build all my profiles globally, but then do my authorization down at the children level. So inside my Linux, I can go under authorization. If you go under role assignment, I'm going to do an assign role. Now a little bit about role assignments here is we have some role definitions. You'll notice these are some ones out of the box. And it's actually the same one for this Linux zone. There's another one down here for the Mac zone, and there's one up top on the global zone. Now, this is on purpose because we could have multiple zones, and this could be different fiefdoms. These actually could be different sub-companies, and a top global company runs this. These could be different individual units or fiefdoms that want to have their own little world, or this is all one big deployment, and these are just different ways of slicing and dicing all my computers out there. So that's why we repeat the built-in computer roles. I like to, again, define everything globally, so I'm going to use the ones that are in the role definitions for under global. So under here I have a basic Unix login role, and that's what we need. If we assign that Unix login role, that allows people to log into all of our Unix machines. The Centrify agent, you got to remember when we install this agent down on a Linux machine and even on a Mac machine, what we're doing is we're adding the ability for Active Directory accounts to log in. We're not taking away the ability of local accounts. We're adding the ability for Active Directory accounts to log in. But how are they going to log in? Well, they're going to log in using this information, this ID, and then I have to give them some kind of role that gives them that Unix login. By default, our agents act like a firewall, deny unless explicitly allow, so we have to give everyone the right to log in before they can. So I have some role definitions up here, the Unix login. That role is going to allow my user to log in. So I want to give Diana Worth the Unix login role. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the Linux child zone, under authorization, under role assignments, assign role. Again, we're going to have the roles defined here a couple different times, but I'm going to pick the one, the Unix login role that's global. So the global one. Click OK. Find my user, Diana Worth. Click OK, click OK. So again, I'm under role assignments for this zone. I define Diana Worth globally. This is my user profile I'm going to use everywhere. And in the Linux zone, I just gave her a role assignment. So now she has a login role on all the computers in the Linux zone. I don't have any computers yet, but that's okay. I'm setting everything up before I install my first agents. We can do the same on a Mac machine. So I go to Mac. This authorization only does it for those child zone, the Linux child zone. So I need to authorize every child zone separately. I could do the authorization at the global level, but that would kind of defeat the purpose unless that person really was an IT admin that gets the right to log in everywhere. If you give someone the right to log globally, they can have their right to log in every single child zone, which might not be the case you want to do. For this case, Diana Worth, I just want to specifically give them a right in every child zone because we're setting up the eval. We just want to test everything and make sure everything works. So I'm going to go down to a Mac, and we consider a Mac a Unix machine, so I can go under role assignments and do the same thing I did before. Assign a role, find the Unix login from global, click OK, do add account, find Diana Worth, click OK, boom, boom. So I did that for the Mac. Now the way I know that I did this right is I can actually right click on any of these zones and say show effective Unix user rights. Now in order for this to show up, the person has to have two things, a user profile and a role, or else they wouldn't have showed up. Diana Worth has both these things, so she shows up. And this is, I know where I get my data, and I can find out that she has a login role. So Diana Worth is set up correctly on the Linux zone. Right-click on the Mac, show effective Unix user rights. Again, she's set up correctly. Now here's what I did again in case I went too quick. Right-click on any zone and pick show effective Unix user rights. That's telling you, did I set everything right? Did I set everything up right for this particular zone? This is how I find out. For the Windows zone, I can right-click and say show effective Windows rights. It's empty right now. I haven't set anyone up. So let me set up Diana now for the Windows zone. So now I can go into Authorization, Role Assignments, right-click, Assign Role. Now this one I want to do the Windows login. So we have one, these are the ones that's built in. I want to take the one from the global zone. So I'm picking the Windows login, the global zone. It really wouldn't matter which zone I pick unless I ever change it. I'm going to keep global as my main place where I store all my roles. So I'm going to click on that one. Click AD account, find D Worth. Click OK. So now Diana Worth has a role inside the Windows zone. So if I right-click on that and pick Show Effective Windows User Rights, she should show up, and she does. So now everything's been set up. I have 3 child zones, a Linux, Mac, and Win, and each one of those, my test user, Diana Worth, can log in. So now everything's set up right on the back end, and now I can actually deploy the agents on these Linux machines, on the Macs, and on the Windows, and when I join them to their appropriate zone, the policy should all be pushed down. The policy gets pushed down so far is, right now, just Diana Worth can log in every one of these zones. That's it. We're done all the back-end setup. This is all we need to do to make sure we're ready, and we'll have the installing the agents in a different video. But for now, we're done setting up the back-end. Thank you.